All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Armchair Armdrager Podcast. As always, I am your host, Ben Hersick, and this is episode number 20. This episode, we got a Clash of Champions recap, my thoughts on NXT moving to USA in the first show, and also all the returns and interesting things that have been happening recently in WWE. But first, as always, the social media spiel, mumbo jumbo, whatever you want to call it. You can follow myself on Twitter at ChurroSolider. You can follow this podcast at Podcast Armchair. You can follow All Things Combat, which is a website that I write for where we cover professional wrestling, boxing, and MMA. Yesterday, I'm recording this on Thursday, so on Wednesday, I had an article go up where I talked about superstars who could go back to NXT because 2 hours is a lot of time to fill, and with a small roster, there's a couple people on the main roster that could come back to NXT and kind of work down there, not to prove themselves, but to at least actually have screen time. And also, I am the sports editor over at the Cauldron at Cleveland State. We publish bi-weekly issues. We're getting ready to do our second issue here in a couple days. Very excited for that. With how well our first issue went, we think we can only go even higher from here. I will say coming up in a couple weeks, there might be a week where we don't have a podcast. That's a very tentative maybe. There's not much going on that week in wrestling anyway, but we'll see. So let's start with NXT going to USA. Let's start kind of small. Overall, the first show I thought was really good. It really highlighted a lot of the strong points of NXT, which was the wrestling tells the story and not the story is told by the promos and all that. You saw the first match, Fatal 4-Way, women's match. Winner gets a championship match. It turned out to be in 2 weeks. It showed each of their strengths. It showed how good of a heel Io Shirai is. My God, she is a phenomenal heel. But in the end, I feel like since they added Candice LeRae into the match, late because the match was announced a week before LeRae was added in. It felt like she was going to win regardless. Plus, Yim had just challenged for the championship and was the only real face in that match besides LeRae. And Belair is kind of a tweener. She can play face. She can be heel. Varies. Io Shirai is clearly a heel. So it felt like Io Shirai winning was out of the question. And if it is... Well, that's interesting now. With LeRae getting the shot 2 weeks, in 2 weeks' time, who gets the shot at War Games? That's what I'm curious about. And then also, people have been very one-sided on this with the Cameron Grimes squash match of Sean Maluda. I was very fine with it because it showed the new fans Grimes is nobody to mess with. He will end you quickly. I'm very curious about it. We'll see where it goes. I'm curious what Grimes has kind of to build off of here. I'm very excited to see what the former Trevor Lee does. And then the main event, almost 25 minutes of just Dream and Roderick Strong going at it. And in the end, the right person won. That shows the new fans watching the show for the first time, or the first time in a long time, that NXT is about Undisputed Era. It doesn't matter who it is, it doesn't matter what the thing is, it runs through Undisputed Era. No ifs, ands, or buts. Very excited to see Undisputed Era with all the gold. I'm very curious with where they go now. What's next for Undisputed Era? We don't really know the challenger for the NXT Championship. Easy, I would say easy money's on Ciampa, but Ciampa just had neck surgery, so do you really want to go that route? And give him a 30 to 40 minute match possibly right after he comes back. North American Championship, you can throw pretty much anybody in the mid-card in there, and you'd get a great match. Tag team titles, the only real team I can see challenging Undisputed Era is Breezango. So there's that. Unless they put Isaiah Scott and Jordan Miles together, I would really like that, personally. Just imagine ACH and Shane Strickland just tearing it up in the ring. In WWE. That's amazing. Overall, this is going to be good. I remember I read the rating. It was 1.1 million people tuned in to watch NXT. Very, very good for a first show. Very curious to see how this compares to AEW's first show. I'll have to wait and see on that. More, more so, I'm curious because it was 2 hours right now. 1 hour was on USA, 1 hour was on the WWE Network. Once Suits ends, which usually airs on Wednesday, whatever the lawsuit sort of drama thing it is, whenever that ends, the second hour will probably be on television then, and because that's like got four episodes left in its whole series, something like that, I think. So we'll get 2 hours of NXT, 2 hours of AEW. I'll be doing NXT coverage for All Things Combat, while Token will be doing AEW coverage. Very exciting times for us too. We've got people covering everything, and we are very excited for it. So let's go to Clash of Champions. Yeah, it was Clash of Champions. I'm like, wait, did I get the name of the pay-per-view wrong? Overall, it was a really big storytelling pay-per-view, I think. Not storytelling, but very big story progression. Because I feel like none of these feuds, except for one, okay, maybe two, ended on Sunday. Let's start with the Cruiserweights, because they were on the pre-show. You had Drew Gulak, Lince Dorado, and Humberto Carrillo fighting for the Cruiserweight Championship. It's just pretty much Drew Gulak's reign now. He can do whatever he wants. He can do no wrong. He's beaten mostly everybody. There's not really many challengers left, which makes me wonder, when the Cruiserweights do officially move to 205 Live, do we see Kushida challenge him? Do we see Jordan Miles? Do we see Isaiah Scott? Excuse me. Cameron Grimes comes to mind. Although that's heel versus heel. Also, Grimes, I think, is like 215. So he's a little bit out of the range, I think. Don't quote me on that. Now, what I am curious about, too, is how do they move forward from this? Because, like I said, Drew Gulak has beaten pretty much everybody. So, who's the next challenger? Who's the next logical person? Overall, a great match. Great match. It was a good match. It was really good. There was a couple of nice little spots. I really liked. Who was it? Gulak had Dorado in an electric chair position outside the ring, and then he had Carrillo in the chair, and Dorado did the suicide dive, I think. I know Gulak was the bottom half of the electric chair. That's all I remember. And either Carrillo or Dorado did the suicide dive. The ending was a bit sloppy. It just kind of like felt weird. Dorado went for the shooting star, but missed kind of. Carrillo went for his finisher, but he sort of hit it, sort of missed it. And then Gulak went for the pin, and Dorado's shoulder was still up. So it was kind of disjointed a little bit at the end, but still overall not a bad way to kick off the show. And then was the questionable call, we'll call it, to have AJ Styles versus Cedric Alexander on the pre-show. Very, very interesting. I'm going to say this. I've read the rumors of Cedric getting buried and everything. I've read them, and I've been looking through them, and I don't buy it yet. Here's why. That man pinned AJ Styles in Madison Square Garden in the main event of Raw. And now, a week later, you're going to bury him. That was maybe the biggest pop of Cedric's career when he won that match. Yes, Stone Cold's music hit. Or no, when even when he had the hot tag, that was a huge pop. It just doesn't add up. And I know Vince is weird sometimes, but that would not make sense to me. Also, I think it was Sean Ross Sapp said it the best. If he's being buried, why is he on TV? I still think at Hell in a Cell we get Cedric versus AJ in a proper match on the main card where Cedric's victorious. The reason why is explained a little later. It deals with Survivor Series. I'll say that much. Now, what was interesting about this match was Cedric did not get squashed. Cedric took it to AJ early, and then AJ brought it late. Half the match went to Cedric, half the match went to AJ. And what's very, very interesting to point out is that it wasn't even really a squash match by any means of the imagination. Cedric got a lot in. It was just AJ got one in. It's an interesting conversation to have, like, what's next for Cedric, what's next for AJ, because there's no real legitimate mid-card face outside of Rey Mysterio. And I don't think they're going to give Rey a title run anytime soon, unfortunately, but still. There's nobody really to face AJ Styles. It's the same issue Kofi had after he beat Orton. And that was resolved on Tuesday night. There's still nobody really left to challenge AJ. I don't know who it's going to be. But those two aside, good pre-shows, good start off for the night. And then we get into the main card. We started off with the Raw Tag Team Championship match between Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler against the champions, Seth Rollins and Braun Strowman. This was actually a very above average tag match. I didn't mind it. And the ending kind of worked for me a little bit. They kind of booked themselves into a corner. They booked themselves into a corner with this match and another match later. There was just... You knew Seth and Braun weren't going to win. You just knew it. So how do you kind of keep them strong going into a main event later that night? The finish was kind of good. Braun came in off the hot tag, was laying out Roode and Ziggler, laid him out again, got Rollins tagged back in, did a couple super kicks, was going for the stomp. I think it was Roode that countered it, or Ziggler distracted. I think it was Ziggler distracted Rollins from hitting the stomp, and then Strowman came in, and what was it? No, I think Roode countered it somehow, some way with a spine buster. That's what it was. Eventually, got to a point where 3 of the 4 men were in the ring, and Dolph was on the outside by the ropes. Strowman went to charge at Ziggler. Roode got out of the way. He ran into Rollins on accident and went over the top rope, which allowed Roode to hit the glorious DDT and win the match. And to be fair, it's the right outcome because it gets the tag titles off of the 2 main event guys. And now it's going to be interesting to see because the Raw and SmackDown tag team divisions, and NXT, to be fair, are just so bad right now. There's nothing really good about tag team divisions. I think there's the potential to be good. Street Profits are there now. Heavy Machinery is a great tag team. Revival, New Day. If they use the Ascension right, it's so interesting because there's the potential there, but they don't capitalize on it. And I'm curious, and I've said this before, Roode and Ziggler probably won't have that long of a title reign. I'm expecting the Viking Raiders to be the ones to knock them off. That could actually set up Viking Raiders versus AOP for Survivor Series, now that I think about it, which would be very, very interesting. Let's see how this goes. We're only a week into the Roode Ziggler reign. I don't mind it so far. They didn't do too much on Raw, but overall, it hasn't been a bad reign yet. I say that it's been like a week, not even. Next up was the SmackDown Women's Championship match between Bayley and Charlotte Flair. I could give you an exact rundown of this match because it only went 3 minutes, and it felt like it went for 2 minutes. This... I'm still in the camp that doesn't think Bayley's a heel yet. And I feel like I'm the only one making this point. And I have very valid evidence as to why. Her and Sasha are going to be champions. Sasha is probably, more than likely, I'm thinking, going to win at Hell in a Cell. Bayley is going to win over Charlotte or Carmella at Hell in a Cell. But the question then becomes Survivor Series. Is it going to be Raw versus SmackDown? Because we don't really know yet. If it's not, whatever I just said is out the window and Bayley's a heel. If it is, Bayley's not a heel yet. Yes, winning by exposing the turnbuckle and pinning your opponent and then running out of the arena qualifies as a heel thing to do. But you think about it, if Bayley had stayed around for Charlotte to get back to regain consciousness, Charlotte would have beaten the crap out of her. That's why Bayley probably ran out of the arena. Now, what's interesting about this is that it does show a side of Bayley we haven't seen before where she is willing to do anything to win. But also, it does show that there is the potential for that Bayley heel turn. And I'm still saying this. This match showed to me that they're working on Bayley heel. Heel Bayley is not going to be wacky waving inflatable arm tube men, preppy, hype up background music for her entrance. It would have to be like an Io Shirai type makeover. Something completely different, something new, something dark. And that's what it probably is going to end up being. I think after Survivor Series, if it is Raw versus SmackDown, we get Bayley on the next week, and that's when we see official heel Bayley. And then we can have those two kind of go their separate ways. Maybe for the draft, we see Charlotte go to Raw and Becky on SmackDown, at least based off of images from the press photo shoot of SmackDown. I'm more curious as to, with Bayley at least, how is it going to be executed? Because it's going to be Becky Lynch on SmackDown. Do they just get the title on Becky Lynch again? Or, because you think about it, at that time, 2K is going to be coming out. And they would have a champion on the cover, and that would be a big thing press-wise for them. And I could see them doing it now that I talk about it. But we could also see Bayley lose a rematch to Becky, and then Becky starts to work with some of the younger women on the roster. Carmella, Ember Moon. Trying to remember every single SmackDown wrestler off the top of my head. I think I named the only other two that I can think of. Asuka, Kairi Sane. And we can actually Becky do something different, which I would like. I don't know what this match really means for Charlotte, but you look at it, the loss didn't hurt her. It wasn't a heelish way, so it's like, yeah, Bayley won, but she got herself a cheap win. So Charlotte not winning here doesn't really affect her. And also, I would like if they didn't make her a 10-time women's champion just yet. Maybe wait till the show after WrestleMania next year. Because I think Sasha in her contract is going to say, like, this year's Mania she's going to retain. And also, like, we're starting to get close-ish to the Royal Rumble. At this time, 2 years ago, I was pretty confident in Shinsuke Nakamura winning the Men's Royal Rumble and Asuka winning the Women's Royal Rumble. At this time last year, even though I think she was SmackDown Women's Champion, yeah, she was, because she was going to face Ronda Rousey at Survivor Series, I was still confident Becky was going to win the Royal Rumble and challenge Ronda Rousey. And Seth Rollins seemed like a shoo-in, because he was the star of Monday Night Raw at the time. This year going in, I don't know. Could it be Charlotte Flair? Could it be somebody we just don't expect? We'll have to wait and see. Because the Rumble is coming. Slowly but surely. the middle of September. So now we have to get to the point where it's Rumble starts to become a rumor at this point, where you start to hear early favorites and early names and possible returns. We'll have to wait and see. I'm more curious as to if Charlotte is going to move brands, because she has a Flair and SmackDown going to Fox for $7 million. You would think they would get a big name like Flair on the roster. But that's 3 horsewomen on one show and only one on the other, and that leaves Sasha with no real credible challengers just yet. So we have to wait and see. We'll see where this goes. We'll see what develops. Obviously, with the draft in a couple weeks here, everything will be decided by then. We'll see. Overall, I think this match just pretty much continued the story of Bayley's eventual full heel turn. Like, she still thinks she's one of the good guys, even though she's doing heelish things. Let's move on to the Revival versus New Day for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. I don't know if everybody saw this coming. I sure as hell did not. I thought that Raw Superstars would never win SmackDown titles. Revival goes and does it and becomes the first ever Triple Crown Tag Team Champions. The only other teams that could reach that, I'm trying to remember everybody who's not been released yet. AOP just needs SmackDown Tag Team titles. DIY if they reunite on the main roster, even though Gargano said he's NXT for life. Undisputed Era. I think that's really it. Because let me think here. Wesley and Blake. Blake's with Forgotten Sons. Wesley's with Forgotten Son. I said Wesley and Blake. Murphy and Blake. Blake's with Forgotten Sons now. And Murphy's over on SmackDown doing God knows what. Who else? Vaudevillains. Aiden English is behind the commentary booth. And what's his face? Simon Gotch got released. Ascension. There's another one. Lucha Dragons. I have no idea what the hell Sin Cara is doing at this point. But we'll see. This was actually a really good basic tag team match. Well, classic tag team match, I should say, not basic. You saw the double teams. You saw the heels working the injuries. Because even though Big E seemed fine, he still had some injury or another that the Revival and Randy Orton did to him. It was kind of storytelling 101. And when I saw Dawson put in the reverse figure 4, I was sitting there thinking, they really can't, can they? They're not really going to do it. And they did it. I'm more curious as to how this will affect the draft. Because technically, the Revival are Raw Superstars, like I said. But now they have some SmackDown titles. When the draft comes around, I don't expect the champions to switch brands. Maybe the mid-card one. I would like to see Nakamura on Raw, but I don't understand SmackDown personally. What I think would be interesting with the Revival is if AOP does come back to SmackDown, they make a beeline for the Revival. Because those two teams, along with DIY, tore it up in NXT. And maybe that's the reason why they put the titles in the Revival. Now that I say it out loud, it makes more sense. They did it because of the fact that they want the titles on AOP and they don't want the New Day to take a loss to a new team yet. Newer. It could be understandable like that, I guess. And I think you look at it, Revival winning, they really want the Revival to stay. Even though they get a dead crowd reaction when they come out, there's just something about them that is so good. It's like, you look at tag team wrestling, they just get classic tag team wrestling. They don't get the whole flippy fly around, yippity doo dah that the Bucks and the Lucha Bros do. They get in the ring, isolate a person, work a body part. They get classic tag team wrestling. And I'm very curious to see what does happen here in a couple months. Because if a string of returns has shown us anything, WWE is really interested in keeping everybody possible. I'm more curious too also, what does this mean for the New Day? Because when October 4th rolls around and rolls to a close, New Day will have lost every title. I'm calling it right now, even though we haven't gotten to Kofi yet. Kofi's losing his title October 4th. Do they stay on SmackDown, or do they move to Raw? Fresh faces, fresh challengers, new opponents for the first time in a while. Does that happen, or do they stay on SmackDown with some new faces, because SmackDown in the end is going to be affected by the shakeup, the draft? I'm so used to calling it the shakeup now. So what does New Day do? Also, everyone's like, oh, this is where you break up the New Day. I don't think the New Day are ever breaking up. They move way too much merch. If wrestling has taught me anything, that merch money is valuable to not just the company, but to the wrestlers. They want to stay together as long as possible. And I think they do. Career tag team? Maybe, now that I think about it again. It's like every time I think about these out loud, they make more and more sense to me. Let's wait and see, because I'm very curious as to where New Day go from here. But I'll have to sit down and actually think about it, because I guess spoilers, I do have a draft article in the works. It's very in the bare bones of it right now. I have 3 names in my head that I think should be drafted. But let's wait and see. Very exciting to see. Very curious about the new direction for the SmackDown Tag Team titles with the Revival. Very indifferent because of the fact that they are Raw superstars that won SmackDown titles. Well, that's beside the point right now. We still have to deal with the wild card for a couple weeks. And then it's gone forever. And everything is better. Infinitely better in 3 weeks, I think. It might be 4 weeks. I'm double checking my math because I'm very bad at math. In 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, the wild card rule is gone, and we don't have to worry about it ever again. Until this Fox deal is over, possibly. But if SmackDown does good, we don't got to worry about that. Anyway, mentioning the wild card rule, the one title I am fine with changing brands, even after the wild card rule is over, the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships, with Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross defending against Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. This match was weird, to say the best. It was weird because they were on the main show, when surprisingly this feud had very little going for it. All Mandy Rose did was call Nikki Cross ugly. And apparently if you just call somebody ugly on the main roster, you get a one-on-one, you get a main card tag team championship match. Now I'm trying to think of who's ugly in a tag team that I could call out to try and get a tag team match on pay-per-view. I can't think of anybody. Damn it. But this match wasn't bad. Was it the best women's tag team title match? No, I think that's probably going to be the fatal the 4-way at Mania for a while. That's going to be the pinnacle of women's tag team wrestling in WWE. But I am curious, because after Sonya and Mandy, I doubt Bayley and Sasha are going to have a championship match. I'm very curious as to what Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross do next. There's one thing that I've yet to mention on Twitter. I think I've solved I think his name is Malcolm Belvins now, but it's Stokely Hathaway. I think I might have solved his CD player mystery. If you go onto, I believe it's WWE's Instagram, they had a photo of the new shirts for all the superstars. I swear I screenshotted it. Where the hell did it go? I'll find it later. But they had shirts for all the all the NXT superstars because of the move. Everybody has at least one shirt now. Chelsea Green and Deonna Purrazzo's are very similar. very identical. One has a blackish letter C, and one has a blackish letter D, where they actually might be a tag team. C, Chelsea Green, Deonna Purrazzo. C, D, players. Is it dumb? Yes. Do I expect it to make sense? Hell no. Do I expect it to work? Hell no. It's too logical. There's no way. But just imagine if I'm right. And how much that would be interesting. How interesting that would be. It's really the only team that's really left for Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross anyway, because let's see, Fire and Desire on the main roster. Iconics. Peyton Royce will probably be back soon from a honeymoon, I'm assuming. There's Nia Jax and Tamina, but Tamina just got cleared and Nia Jax is still dealing with double ACL surgery, so. And there's other teams you could see put together too. I'm curious how close Ruby Riott is to a return. I don't think yet, but I'm not sure how close she actually would be. So you put her back with Sarah Logan maybe. Or let Ruby Riott be a single star along with Sarah Logan being another single star. Thoughts, but that's about it. The women's tag team titles are kind of dead right now. There's not really much intrigue about them. I'm very curious as to what the direction is because, like, I know I've read reports Vince McMahon is not a fan. There are plenty of us that are fans, Vince. I think these titles can work. You just need to put together people to wrestle. Yes, put together tag teams are not the best. Look at Rude and Ziggler winning a tag team turmoil match in their first time teaming together. But put them together for a couple weeks, start establishing them, and then maybe they get like a match against the champions, not for the titles, but like maybe they get a match against them, and we see how those teams work. It's just a concept I have. I don't know if it's really going to work, but we'll see. Also, I keep saying this, how long are Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville going to be together? It's almost like they're the odd couple, because Mandy's like the girl in high school that is the head cheerleader, dates the quarterback of the football team, all the typical stereotype popular girl in high school things, and Sonya Deville is just like there. I don't think they're going to be a team for much longer, and I'm nervous for what happens with Sonya Deville afterwards. Where does she go? What does she do? Honestly, I really hope she goes to NXT, or even NXT UK for that matter. But I don't think, if they break up, there's not really a spot for her right now on the main roster. Which it's tough for me to say because I'm a huge fan of Sonya Deville. And I want to see her succeed, but if there's no spot for her, then NXT would be a fantastic place. She could learn a lot. Even though she's already a pretty good pro wrestler, she could still learn from the likes of Io Shirai, Mia Yim, Candice LeRae. There's so many minds she could pick down there. Even Hunter. She could pick Hunter's mind, which carries a lot more weight than picking Vince McMahon's mind. So, that's the Women's Tag Team Championship match. Surprisingly, this show went really quick. Only 2 matches clocked in at over 20 minutes. The next one is not one of those. Shinsuke Nakamura defending the Intercontinental Championship against Sami Zayn. Not Sami Zayn, against The Miz. It's because Shinsuke Nakamura is listed as with Sami Zayn that I made that mistake. It was at this point my internet started to act a little weird. I did end up watching this match like a day or two later. And I keep saying this, Shinsuke Nakamura just, he can't really find like the guys to gel with on the main roster. Him and AJ gelled well, they just didn't have enough time in like the first 2 or 3 matches they had of their 4-match series. Jeff Hardy just had other storylines going on at the time. Who did he lose? Oh God, who did he lose the U.S. title to? Who did Nakamura lose the U.S. title to? It wasn't AJ. It wasn't Joe. it was it Truth? I'm going on Nakamura's page because I don't remember. No, I don't want to look at the picture. WWE. Let's look here. Greatest Royal Rumble and United States Championship. Randy Orton, Nakamura, his weight opponent. First match since SummerSlam on September 11th episode of Jeff Hardy via disqualification. Blah 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 blah. 20,000. Nakamura lost to returning Rey Mysterio in a qualifying match for World Cup. Lost to Raw's Seth Rollins. Oh, it was Rusev. And then he lost to Rusev, then he beat Rusev. And then he did lose to R-Truth. Okay, I was right. So he lost to Truth. And him and Rusev had a decent feud, if I remember right. It's almost a year ago at this point. So very tough. But Nakamura just can't catch a break on the main roster, I think. Like, he's had good matches. He hasn't had really a horrible match since his matches with Jinder Mahal, but it's just like he can't click. And while I was surprised that he won, I'm more happy that Miz didn't win because I don't want him to get the record just because Chris Jericho is a champion in another promotion. That's like a level of petty I don't want to see from WWE. So, as for the Intercontinental Championship, this is where I think Cedric winning the U.S. title from AJ could play into things. Because it looks like Ali versus Nakamura is now back on the table. And the only reason it was shelved was because Ali was in the King of the Ring tournament. I think. I hope. And I look at this as the perfect opportunity to have Ali versus Alexander in this match. While in the champion versus champion match. Champion versus champion match. I can't speak today. Well, like I said, I don't want Shinsuke just to lose the title at a random point to a random person. This is the one person I don't mind him losing it to. Plus, if you build up this title right with Ali, you can make it to be an even bigger and better thing. If maybe Shinsuke wins it back, or if maybe Ali drops this title eventually to Andrade. I would really like to see that. There's so many directions this title could go right now, and it's weird because it's like one of the most prestigious belts in WWE history. And now it's like you can just be used to build up somebody, which is what it really always has been. But it's like, it's weird. It's like you think about historic wrestlers, you think about Intercontinental Championship wins. Like, look at Shawn Michaels, look at Bret Hart, look at Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect. Look at Rick Rude. You have guys who have made this title great, and then it kind of slipped into irrelevancy, and then it was brought back to relevancy with the likes of The Miz. And Miz is a great Intercontinental Champion, don't get me wrong. I've gone on record and said he might be one of the best. But Miz beating Nakamura just because Jericho's the champion in another promotion, so Miz can break Jericho's record, did not feel right in any way, shape, or form. I am so happy they decided to go against it. What I'm more curious about, like I said, is the future of Nakamura. It's also the future of Miz. He hasn't won a big match in a long time. I think it was the SmackDown Tag Team Championships at the Royal Rumble was his last big match that he won. Because him and Shane McMahon lost into the Usos at Elimination Chamber. They lost the rematch to the Usos at Fastlane. Shane turned on Miz. Shane beat Miz at Mania. Shane won the rematch at Money in the Bank. And then Miz didn't have a pay-per-view match for a couple times, and then he lost to Nakamura. So what's really nice for The Miz? Where does he go? What does he do? Honestly, I think what I would like to see is put a young guy with Miz and maybe make him a tag team. Maybe like have Miz kind of like take over that mentor role before he turns heel and we get another heel run from Miz. Because I don't mind this current face Miz, but heel Miz is always going to be the best Miz. Nobody can argue that. So that's the Intercontinental Championship match. This is a tough one to talk about because like there's so much that kind of worked but didn't work. And Sami Zayn having a mic ringside is like my biggest issue. It didn't work with Lio Rush. Don't try and make it work with Sami Zayn. That's like my main complaint with this match. Everything else just kind of felt okay, but just didn't work in some spots. So next up was the Raw Women's Championship match between Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch. This is the other match WWE kind of booked themselves into a corner of, because you don't want Becky to lose the title yet, but you don't want Sasha to win the title yet. This match happened too fast. The only way this match was going to end was disqualification or count out. And I'm happy to go the disqualification route. I'm confused as the way it worked. Like, did Becky get disqualified from the back? Did Becky get disqualified from the referee after she got hit? She hit in the ring? Did Finlay disqualify her? I don't know. There's like so many variables that just didn't add up in this match, and it's like, why? Overall, the match actually was really good. And I argue this with a grain of salt, because there have been so many really good Sasha matches on the main roster, but this might have been Sasha's best match. And it's a very hard argument to make, but it just looked really good. I should clarify best match on the main roster. I still think Sasha's best match ever is going to be that Iron Woman match she had with Bayley in NXT. But overall on the main roster, this one is way up there, like with her feuds with Charlotte. And then there's that the 3 of the 4 horsewomen at WrestleMania 32 for the new Raw Women's Championship. So I look at this. That's the one big issue I had was the disqualification, because it kind of felt like you didn't know where it came from, and like I understand that part. What I'm also curious about is the fact that you had these two just go hell for leather, and Sasha looked great. Do you just have it be a two match feud and then you're done? These two don't touch for however long until the 4 horsewomen reunion, or do we see these two keep going? I think after Hell in a Cell it's over, but I've been wrong before. I really enjoyed the fighting through the crowd. And it's something we don't see a lot outside of street fights and no disqualification matches. So like, to see it again is really nice, because like you watch New Japan, and they have it almost every single match. You see them just fighting through the crowd, or doing suicide dives, and the guy going 4 rows deep into the crowd. But you see that all the time. So to see it in a WWE match was a really nice change of pace. What I'm curious about, why mustard? Why did Becky throw mustard at Sasha Banks? Why not ketchup? Why not relish? Why not mayonnaise? Mayonnaise is better cold. Imagine just Sasha getting hit with cold mayonnaise in the middle of a match. And the noise it would make. Because if you have not seen the music video, or the video of this, mayonnaise slaps. It is a hilarious musical instrument. And just imagining the thud it would make when it hit Sasha is hilarious to me. Like, seriously, go watch the mayonnaise music video. It's hilarious. But this was, like I said, this was maybe the easily predictable match. Like, you knew it was going to end in disqualification. You just didn't know who was going to get disqualified. Was it going to be Sasha? Was it going to be Becky? You just really didn't know. It could have also worked out to be a no contest in some way, I guess, but disqualification was the easiest bet. Just next time you do a disqualification match, just to have it be a simple, this person got disqualified via the back, or this person got disqualified from by the referee who was hit when he was being checked on by medical personnel, or something along those lines. Just don't make it like, why was this person disqualified? We don't know. Who disqualified them? That's my biggest gripe with this match. Next, we had the WWE Championship match with Kofi Kingston and Randy Orton. It's weird, and I forget who said this again. It was one of the wrestling journalists. Not Shepard or the other one everybody hates, that I'm blanking on his name. It wasn't Meltzer either. Again, it might have been Sean Ross. The WWE Championship is being used as a cool-down match. Like, you just had maybe the most well-booked story for this pay-per-view in Sasha and Becky, followed by the WWE Championship match. And it just felt like a cool-down match. Why? And to be fair, it wasn't a bad match. It was a typical Randy Orton match. Randy Orton matches never go too crazy, never do too many insane things. And there's not much innovation. It just gets Orton in and out, and his opponent in and out. Overall, this might have been Orton's best match in a little while, because he hasn't really done much recently. It might be his best match since WrestleMania with the AJ feud. Now, what I'm curious about for Kofi, we know his title reign's coming to an end, and we'll get to that in a matter of seconds here. But where does Orton go? What does Orton do? Like, yeah, we saw he still has it, and he can still go with a world champion. But there's no real feud in the works for him. There's nothing really going on. He's not going to feud with the Revival, I can tell you that right now. But when you look at it, how does Orton go forward? And Orton's been one of the guys to say that, hey, if you don't need me for a tour, take one of the younger guys. He has said that before. And I'm curious if that's what's going to end up happening here. Orton's going to start to fade to the background and then show up come WrestleMania season again. Maybe have a short feud going into Mania, or even show up in the Rumble match. Or maybe he's going to be part of the Survivor Series 5-on-5 with SmackDown, which would help SmackDown because Randy Orton, if you didn't know, is really good at Survivor Series. He's really good, like insanely good. But I look at it, this match, there just wasn't really much to take away. It was kind of like the filler match almost, which the WWE Championship being a filler match is kind of just sits wrong with me. I don't like it. Now, what I am curious about is what happened on SmackDown. Brock Lesnar interrupted Kofi Kingston. Brock Lesnar wants a championship match. And Brock Lesnar is getting that October 4th on SmackDown on the first night it's on Fox. Now, my question is, I have a couple questions. A, do we have a WWE Championship match at Hell in a Cell then? B, if it is confirmed that the WWE title will be on the line at Hell in a Cell, does this match end in any other way other than disqualification? There's a dual-sided coin here where, yes, Brock's going to be champ and get people's eyes on the product, but also you're ending Kofi's reign, which hasn't been bad. They haven't had a truly great WWE Championship reign since CM Punk. His 434-day reign is still maybe the greatest run of the modern era as far as WWE Champion. Like, AJ going over a year was cool. Kofi getting damn near close to 200 days is cool. But it's like there's just one thing that is nagging, because it's not been a great title reign. It's been a good title reign. Brock winning the title was just going to be a good title reign. Is this just going to be a ploy for us to get Roman Reigns over? Absolutely. I don't think Roman's set for a great title reign. Roman's set for a decent title reign. But we'll see. I'm very curious about the future of this title and what happens after Roman wins it. Because let's be completely honest. We all know Roman Reigns is going to win the WWE Championship from Brock Lesnar at some point in time. Probably WrestleMania. Who knows? And now we're on to the semi-main event. And speaking of the devil, it's Roman Reigns versus Eric Rowan in a no disqualifications match. This one was really good. This showed that Rowan can actually go. when you think back to the days of the Wyatt family and even the Bludgeon Brothers, Harper was the one that kind of stood out to the fans. Like, he's really good. Rowan and I always kind of fell by the wayside, especially when Strowman eventually entered the group. But you look at it now, Rowan is really damn good. Somebody pointed out, Rowan has faced The Rock at WrestleMania and has a pinfall victory over Roman Reigns in his career. Not very many people can say they've done that. Even John Cena can't say he's done that. I think Rowan is actually in a class of his own there. So, to look at it like, wow, Rowan is actually impressive in the ring is really cool. Because nobody saw this coming. Nobody predicted it. I didn't predict it. You didn't predict it. You didn't predict it. This was a really great match for Rowan. And the ending kind of fit perfectly. Because Rowan and Roman, in the battle of the guys whose names sound familiar, especially if you just take the M and flip it upside down, in Roman, they went all the way throughout the arena. The finishing sequence was the most important, though. You had Roman hit Rowan with some sort of microphone-looking thing, and Rowan kind of stumbled around a little bit. Reigns hit something on the stage to send Rowan going down it. And Roman was going to set up to deliver one of those big spears that he's done like 4 or 5 times now. However, he ran into the boot of somebody we hadn't seen since WrestleMania. And it was somebody you couldn't tell right away because he had slimmed down a lot. He turns around, Luke Harper. There have been rumors going around like 2 days before the show that WWE just had nothing for him. And now, all of a sudden, he's back on television. I could not be happier about this. I am a huge fan of Luke Harper. I want to see him succeed. I'm very excited for him to succeed. What has me worried, though, is this tag team thing just going to be a way to get Roman over again? I really don't want it to be. I really don't. It's taking every bone in my body to believe that it's not going to be that, but I think it might be that. As long as Rowan is the one to take the pin, I am completely fine with this. But we all thought Luke Harper was a goner. Nobody thought Luke Harper was coming back. Everyone thought he was gone. When his contract expires, he's leaving. He could end up in AEW. He might go back to All Japan Pro Wrestling. I would have loved to have seen him in New Japan Pro Wrestling against the likes of Okada. Imagine Luke Harper, or what was his name on the Indies? Brody Lee. Imagine Brody Lee versus Minoru Suzuki. That would have been scary. And we all would have loved every second of it. There is no doubting that. This speaks volumes too, because the next night there was another big return. And then on Wednesday there was even another big return. And if my math is right, there's not many superstars left sitting at home just getting a paycheck anymore. I'm very, very curious as to what changed, as to do they now have plans, or as to what's going to happen next. Where is their next step? Their next step, excuse me. For example, with Harper and Rowan, I don't know if this is going to be a long-term partnership, if this is going to be a short-term partnership, or if we're just going to see them together for a little bit. If it's a short-term partnership, you can put Rowan in the main event scene, but at least make Harper be like that dominant mid-card heel that WWE really needs badly. But enough of me going on about Luke Harper and how much I'm a fan. Honestly, to be fair, I'm a fan of 95% of wrestlers. There's just a few that I don't get. But as a main event now, it's Seth Rollins versus Braun Strowman for the Universal Championship. This match was better than it had any right to be. And I've gone on record to say this. I'm bored of Braun Strowman. I've said it before, and I'll probably keep saying it. I never said Braun Strowman can't go. Braun Strowman is talented in between those ropes, don't get me wrong. And that match on Sunday proved that. Now I look at it, it's just the thing of I don't remember who said this either. This might have been a random person on Twitter that said it first. Braun Strowman is this generation's Big Show. And to be completely fair, it's true. They've both turned heel and face multiple times. They've both kind of exhausted every opportunity they've gotten recently. I think I remember reading Braun Strowman's 0-6 or 0-8 in Universal Championship matches. He's starting to get the story of he's a dominant wrestler, yes, he's the monster among men, but he can't get the job done when the lights are the brightest. Now, what I'm curious about, at least for this match, was that the right move at the end there? Seth Rollins hit 4 stomps and a pedigree. Does that make Rollins look strong, or does that make Strowman look weak? Now, what I'm very curious about is what's next for Strowman. We all know what's next for Rollins, and we'll get to that in a second. What's next for Strowman, because he lost the Raw Tag Team titles, he lost in the main event to the Universal Champion. Now, where does he go? Who's next? Who does he challenge next? Is it going to be him and Joe Schmo versus Rude and Ziggler? Could it be him and Big Show? Because Big Show just got medically cleared. I really don't want that now to think about it. I do not want that match. I'm more curious about Braun's direction now. Because he's looked good these past few weeks. He's looked phenomenal. But he's not going to the mid-card picture. He doesn't really have a spot in the main event scene. I don't think he really... I was going to say he doesn't really work on SmackDown, but I think he could. But I don't want it. I don't want Strowman on SmackDown. I don't like that imagery. I feel like Strowman is a Raw guy for life. Kind of like how Cena was a Raw guy for life after his initial run on SmackDown and before his second run on SmackDown. But with Strowman, you kind of see that they don't really have anything for him. But he's always there. He never, leaves. He never says that I'm tired of all this. He just shows up week in and week out. Like, I'm just here to work and put on performance to make you believe in me again. And like I said, he's not bad in the ring. He's actually really good in the ring. He's improved tenfold. But as to him being seen as a legit threat now, that opportunity's kind of come and gone. There's no real next step for him. He's got to start from square one for like the 7th or 8th time in his career. And I got to tell you, it's probably starting to drive him crazy because the talent's there and everybody knows the talent's there, but he just can't get over the hump. But that's Braun Strowman. Seth Rollins has an interesting path ahead of him. And it's a path I'm still skeptical on. After the match, out came The Fiend. There's a reason I'm skeptical about this. We've seen one match of this new gimmick. Only one match. And to me, The Fiend is an attraction. You don't need The Fiend for every single show. You bring him out for big matches. Maybe he does get like a pay-per-view match every month. Or every 2 months possibly now. Depending on how this Raw SmackDown deal is going to work going forward. And I just don't think it's time yet. I don't like that they're rushing this decision. And I keep saying this. I've said this since last week. I've been saying it to other people for a little while longer. With Drew McIntyre's injury, how much has this changed plans? Because I feel like Drew McIntyre was supposed to be in this spot. I feel like, while yes, I don't mind Baron Corbin winning King of the Ring, I don't feel like this is the spot the Fiend should have been in. And I'm curious as to, do they put the title on him? I personally wouldn't hate it, but I don't know if it's the right decision. And we won't know until 2 to 3 months into a reign if it happens. Now, the main reason I don't agree to it is because it's too early, I think, in the run for The Fiend. But also, I don't really think he needs a title. The Undertaker, towards the end of his career, didn't really need a title. And he lost it fair and square at the Elimination Chamber via Shawn Michaels. A super kick from out of the grate of the Elimination Chamber so Jericho could win the title. And Taker never sniffed the main event world championship scene again. Yeah, there was that little feud he had with Kane, but he never won there. He always let Kane keep the title. It's going to be interesting because the way they're booking it, I don't know. And also, if The Fiend does win the championship, who the hell does he lose it to? There is no clear, bona fide second face star on Raw. This very second, there isn't. That could all change come October 14th. But right now, there's nobody really behind Seth Rollins. And I'm very curious as to who really could it be. And I'm nervous about The Fiend because if they don't put the title on him, fans are going to riot. If they do put the title on him, fans are going to be happy. But it's at the cost of one of your main stars. Also, what does that mean for Rollins? Does it mean Rollins is going to SmackDown? Honestly, I think he would have worked better on Raw. So then what the hell do you do with Seth Rollins? So it's like all these different games you play, and it's like this just doesn't add up. It's so mind wrecking with all this Fiend talk. Like I said, I don't hate the idea of him winning the WWE Championship, but I don't think it's the right time, and I don't think he needs it. He is one of the few people that does not need it. Now that's Clash of Champions. That was my thoughts. I said overall this was a good story progression pay-per-view. It really was, because we all knew the Strowman match was just going to be filler. We all knew if Kofi lost, then Brock Lesnar was probably coming. We all knew that Becky versus Bayley had... I keep wanting to say that. Becky versus Sasha had to end in disqualification or count out. We kind of got that. What else did we know? That's really about it, to be fair. Oh, we also all knew that Rude and Ziggler were winning the tag team titles. So that's that, but let's talk about the 3 shows after Clash of Champions. On Raw, we saw the return of Rusev. Yes, the storyline's weird, and I think what will be hilarious is that the storyline is just that Maria keeps saying different people is the baby's dad. And they do have like Jerry Springer come on to an episode of Raw to reveal that the father actually is Mike. And that would be an interesting story, I think. But Rusev is back. And possibly the father of Maria Kanellis' child? Question mark. Also, how does Lana fit into all this? But it's nice to see him back. He's leaned down a lot. He's got a mustache now. And he got a haircut. It's a nice mustache too, by the way. Now, on SmackDown, we did see Luke Harper again, which I'm very happy about. Every time we see that the return isn't just a one-off and that he's back, the person's back full-time on weekly television is nice. And especially that he's in the main event segment with Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns and beating those two up. It's really nice to see that for Luke Harper. And then on Wednesday, on the NXT portion, on the WWE Network portion of NXT, we saw the return of somebody we haven't seen since WrestleMania, since post-WrestleMania. Lio Rush. Nobody saw this one coming. everybody kind of thought that Leo was just going to be released when his contract came up and that he was going to just show up at like some indie shows here and there before signing somewhere. Possibly New Japan. I hate that that's my like de facto go-to for everybody who could leave a company, but just imagining Leo Rush in the best of the Super Juniors with the likes of Marty Scurll, Flip Gordon, Will Ospreay, Shingo Takagi, that's just phenomenal, and I would love to see it. But with Leo, he didn't only just return, he's the new number one contender for the Cruiserweight Championship. I have several questions about this. Where has he been? What has he been doing? Yes, I know he put out a music video. I don't think he put out a whole album. I could be wrong, though. And I'm curious as to, what's really been the reason for his absence. Has it been that he's in the doghouse? Was it just the music that kind of put him out of action? And why is he all of a sudden the number one contender? Is it because Oni Lorcan just had a championship match? I'm very confused. I'm very excited. I'm very happy to see that Leo Rush is back. He's one of the best, if not the best, high flyers in the modern era. And these three guys returning were three guys that were in contract disputes, creative slumps, or possibly in the doghouse. All three are now back. And while I look at the WWE roster really quick, to my knowledge, only Raw and SmackDown guys have really had disputes as far as like contract length and stuff and whatnot. To my knowledge, the only people not on the shows right now are Bobby Lashley and Jinder Mahal. And Drew McIntyre, to be fair. All three of those aren't because of contract disputes or creative slumps. Those are injuries. Oh, yes, you do have the likes of, EC3, Mojo, Rawley, and No Way Jose just not being on TV week in and week out. Two of those guys we don't really need to see week in and week out. Sorry, Mojo and No Way Jose. But, like, EC3, it would be nice to see them kind of have something for him. I'm trying to think if anybody's, misused on SmackDown or not used enough. Buddy Murphy. Be nice if they actually had something for Murphy. I wouldn't mind the team of Murphy Ali, if that's something they're considering. I wouldn't mind Murphy in a tag team just to have something to do. Maybe Murphy Matt Hardy. That would be an interesting one. Apollo Crews is coming to mind too. But the two big ones that you don't see right now are Bobby Lashley and Jinder Mahal because of injury. So that means everybody with a contract dispute is back. Everybody with some sort of creative slump is back, or at least is showing up week in and week out. We haven't heard reports of people not being there outside of Rusev, Luke Harper, and Leo Rush. And now all three are back. And I'm curious if this could signal certain guys going back to NXT. Because I called the Leo Rush one. He was one of the guys I mentioned in my article. And with the Cruiserweights eventually going to be under the NXT banner, Leo Rush being the first challenger does make sense because he has history in Full Sail. Not a lot, but he's got history there. I also am excited to see what Leo Rush can do now, especially with somebody like Drew Gulak. And we'll see how that goes. We'll see when that championship match is, because we really don't know. It could be next week. It could be the week after. It could be at TakeOver. It could be at Hell in a Cell for all we know. And we can see Leo Rush actually compete in a competitive match on pay-per-view outside of facing Finn Balor. That is really all I can think of for this week. Next week, we'll find something. I think next week is the week before AEW. So what we could do next week is what WWE can learn from AEW before the first episode. So like what has the AEW done right that WWE needs to focus on? We'll see about that. I'm very curious to see how that will go. I'm very excited because while I've made my pick for the Wednesday Night War, it's mostly because of my job. My job is going to be to cover NXT while Token covers AEW. So Don't really know what I can say about that. That is all we got for this week. And as always, as I always end these videos, podcasts, words, I'm good at them. You can follow myself on Twitter at ShiroSolider. You can follow this podcast at Podcast Armchair. You can follow All Things Combat on Twitter at Things Combat, where we cover professional wrestling, boxing, and MMA. I recently put out an article about superstars that could go back to NXT. There are some names on there you'd expect, some names that are kind of surprising, I think. And some names you're like, they're actually on the main roster? Wow, I didn't know that. That's because they're not on TV. And I went through the rosters and specifically picked people not on TV to be on that list. And you can also follow The Cauldron, which I am the sports editor for at Cleveland State, over at CSU Cauldron. We are going to have new articles up, I believe, on Wednesday next week. Tuesday or Wednesday. I don't remember which one. One of those days will be up. I will leave links to those articles down below. I will leave links to the All Things Combat merch store, which I forgot to plug last week. Our merch store is back. What do we got now? We got some backpacks in there. We got phone cases again. I saw a water bottle was in there. We've got a lot of stuff. You can buy our merch. The spreadshirt for that will be in the description. The link to the Spreadshirt store will be in the description. But thank you guys so much for listening. Feel free to hit subscribe, hit like, all those things. Let me know what you thought of the episode. And what did you think of Clash of Champions? Did you like it? Did you not? Only one way to let me know. Just reply and leave a. I'm bad at words. I'm sorry. Leave a comment on this video and let me know. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you next week.